eye-opener to many others as well. So what we did, we again worked out this. We had a retail outlet near to that. Retail outlet is petrol pump, which was adjacent to the prison. We had we tried to engage these women who are either serving or have just come out of the jail to work in this retail outlet. And to tell you very frankly, this entire petrol pump or retail outlet is manned by the ladies who are ex-prisoners or current prisoners. So we undertook a on-the-job training for them. Superintendent of the special jail, they helped us. We developed them as a helper. We got them. We had counselors who also did the family tie-ups. And then with all this, finally, we got them as our customer attendants in those retail outlets. And to tell you very frankly, it has been an eye-opener for all of us. Not only that particular retail outlet has become one of the highest selling retail outlets in Hyderabad, but also it has given a meaning to those group of people who are not only working there, but also the people who are coming to those retail outlets to fill products in their tanks, in their vehicles, whether it is two-wheelers or four-wheelers. I mean, the feedback which is being given from the customers as well as the people who are working there has been phenomenal. So I would not try to take much time on this. I would just like to say that this is how you can always have a business perspective. You can have business imperatives, whereas you are dealing with the core purpose. Purpose which has now come to the core of your organization, and your values are displayed in the full form. So that's all from my side. I think it is important, it is pertinent, it will remain pertinent. It was pertinent yesterday, it is pertinent today, and it will remain pertinent tomorrow as well. Over to you, Rajiv. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I now turn to my dear friend and former colleague in the Tatas, R. Mukundan, CEO of Tata Chemicals. Mukund, how does the senior leadership live purpose and values in the everyday life of the business? Over to you, Mukund.
Thank you, Rajiv, and thank you, everyone. I think this is, if at all, a biggest impact a leader can leave is to live by the same purpose and values which the organization is supposed to do. I often speak to youngsters and to my own colleagues that there are two bookends to any endeavor which we do. One bookend is purpose. The other bookend, I call it culture. But culture is an amalgam of values in practice. That's what culture is all about. It's about amalgam of values in practice. So it's pretty much the stuff in between. What we do is strategy and tactics. But if at all there's a major leader's role, the leader's role is in defining the purpose of the organization and building a culture which is in consonance with himself, also with the societal needs. Now, if you look at Tata Group, our purpose is very simple. It is to improve quality of life. And that's as wide as a purpose can get. And every company within Tata Group focuses on improving quality of life. That's our stated purpose. As far as our culture, our values are concerned, it is driven by just one statement, which is leadership with trust. So we want to lead in every activity we do, but we want to do it in such a way we earn the trust of stakeholder. So that forms the cornerstone of everything we do. And as leaders within each company, our job is to build this through actions, what we demonstrate as individual action. We always say it always begins with I, and leaders have the largest shadow, and they need to do that day to day. So if you ask me, culture is what people do when no one is watching them. Between culture and purpose, if you have to choose one, I would choose culture, because culture can then even help you to define the purpose. Culture is what people do when no one's watching them. It is driven by values. It is imbibed through actions of leaders, and it is spread through rituals and storytelling. If you talk about Tata Chemicals, our values are SPICE, which is safety, passion, integrity, care, and excellence. So rather than speak about all of them, I'm going to speak through an example of safety, which is our first value, the most important value which we have, and what have we done as an organization to build that culture and what individual leaders like us have done to build that. My own experience of coming into terms with why safety was so important to me came when I was appointed as a plant manager for Tata Chemicals, one of the biggest plants. And within 1 week, I was away on tour to Jamshedpur. Within 1 week, I got a call on a phone saying that 3 employees have died and there's been a big fatal incident. You must return back. It was a good luck that Tata Steel had an aircraft, so they flew me immediately to Bombay, and I could reach that very afternoon into my factory, that evening into the factory, and the factory inspector was coming. And the fear amongst all the employees was he's going to come and shut the unit down because 3 people had died. And what had happened was they had gone to take lunch under an unused tank, which was no longer in service because it was hot outside. They were sitting under the shade. And right at that moment, the tank collapsed on them. That's really what happened. And this was out of service and it was not an area anybody should go. But all said and done, this incident happened. The factory inspector did come, and I think he instilled, and he was the biggest teacher in my life. He came in and he said, Mukund, I want you to come with me to that tank and let's walk every inch of that collapsed tank. And I was really scared because this was a tank which was in mangled, steel mangled, and he made me walk. And he said, don't be afraid, I'm an inspector. I know I've done this. And I was very young. I was hardly 36 at that time. And he walked in front of me. And he wanted me to get a sense of what it would be to sit under the tank when it collapsed. And he kept telling me, imagine this in your life forever now. And I was walking back, he told me, do you know why I made you do that? And I said, no, I don't understand. So he told me, it's easy for me to stop your operation. But if out of this incident, I can build at least one organization which wants to excel in building the safety culture, safety as a value, I would have achieved my purpose. And after that, he allowed us to continue the operation. And every time he finally became the labor, the chief factory inspector, and he was in the labor department. I would go and meet him in Ahmedabad every time. He was a great friend. He was a great teacher. But I think this single incident changed my perspective on safety as one of the prime elements of building a value in the company. So what have we done? Any safety incident actually is reviewed by the CEO directly. I go down and ask the person exactly what happened, what could they have done to avoid it. It is the number one item in every board meeting. It is the number one item in every departmental meetings. It's an item which we start every meeting with a safety pause so that everybody knows that there is something called safety, which is most important. In terms of, if you say, how does it impact everybody? It is a multiplier in performance pay. So you don't, if there's a multiplier, this is the only multiplier. It's not an additive element in the performance pay. One of the key turning points we had was in this whole safety journey is when we said we will take it beyond where it is today. We said all of us are collectively responsible for our colleagues' safety. And the way we are going to demonstrate is that we will atone for our flaws and faults if there are any, and if it leads to an unfortunate incident. And we now have something called a Suraksha Scheme, wherein the entire management actually participates in buying an annuity to an employee if he were to have a fatality on his last drawn salary, which increases every 3 years at inflation rate. We buy an annuity from LIC and give it to him, and that annuity is paid till his retirement age. And this is called Suraksha Scheme, and every employee participates in it in proportion to his salary. It's deducted in the next month's salary if this were to happen. And there was a fear at that time that many people will misuse it. They will say there's a safety incident so that family can benefit. We've had only three beneficiaries up till now out of this unfortunate incident, and it has led to a massive outpouring in terms of working towards safety culture, which is collaborative safety culture, where we take care of each other in the factory. And the union is very, very positively moving towards every element in terms of whatever we say important for safety. There is one single view of safety in the company. We have tightened safety to the extent that, where the moment you leave your house, till you come back to your house, we are responsible for your safety. So road safety is part of that. We now have family participating in safety. There is an auto approval of safety capital spend. There are separate safety audits. And we've had record performances after these changes. Rallis, Rajiv, you were the CEO of that company, has had 7 years without an incident. Without an incident. And that's a record for Rallis. It's an amazing record they've been able to achieve. And I think when you start with safe culture building exercise, it's a long journey, but it starts with leadership. It spreads fast, and there's a huge stickiness to it. Last point I wanted to say, as a leader, if you want to really spread the culture, spread the value, you must be open to two things. And this goes back to Anil, what you've been telling us from day one, the Johari window, never forget it. First is self-disclosure. You must be able to admit your issues, your weaknesses. And second is seek feedback on every culture, every value aspect. As long as as a leader, you're willing to do that, which means you're willing to disclose and you're willing to seek feedback, you will expand the zone of transparency and your organization can see it. And once your organization sees it, it will follow that through and through. So these are my 2 words about leaders living it and my own personal experience of what happened in safety. A very unfortunate incident, but that taught me a lesson. Thank you, Raji.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this very, very moving sharing. Thank you. Thank you. I move now to Saurabh Govil, CHRO of Wipro. Saurabh, would you like to share your insights on the linkage of other HR levers like hiring, training, rewards, and any other lever to purpose and values? Over to you, Saurabh.
Thanks, Rajiv. Thank you. And it's an important subject, and I personally believe, as Mukund said, apart from leadership role modeling, which impacts values, it is these HR processes which people see on a day-to-day basis, which makes them believe that the organization lives these values. And being very people-driven, people-intensive organization with 80,000 people, for us, if we have to live these values, then it has to be embedded in every process from an HR standpoint. And a few examples I'll share, which illustrate this point, which is that it can happen the entire life cycle of an employee from hire to retire. You cannot say I'm a merit-based organization and you are okay to hire people if somebody is referred a guy without any merit. And people see this every action happening in this organization. We today take pride that I've been in this organization for nearly 1.5 decades, and people take pride saying that never in this organization, a referral will come even on the chairman to hire anybody. It is just to process anybody. So these are the first steps of trying to drive a merit-based organization where you say, I'm living these values in the processes, HR processes. Second is about, we've spoken about performance management, another one, and I remember, Rajiv, you won't recollect many years back when you were running an HRD, you had organized a thing and I was speaking for at that point of time, why we should have the bell curve, and you were saying it should be there. And today I believe that, if it is a merit organization, then there should be no bell curve. Now, should organizations drive that, because that's what people start believing, that if we're driving a merit, and this is the way to do it. So that's another process which we have to look from an HR standpoint. Third is about rewards. We as an organization believe that performance and values of a leader are equally important. If you are only driving performance and no values, you are no good. If you're only having values, you need to drive performance. And we believe that reward and recognition for leaders has to happen when they exhibit both performance and values. And this is what, again, we look at is how do we look at it. This is a very classic example where we had a very, very tall leader in the organization. She was performing for 5 years at a row, meeting her targets, lady business leader, in an Indian environment, exceptionally well. And we had a challenge because she was so driven by performance. And as there was a saying that, there'll be many dead bodies left on the way, but the result will happen. And the call that we had to take was, then the bigger role happened, that is it only performance or is it both? And when she didn't get the role, Another person got it because, in spite of the best performance, that drove the message in the organization. The rewards in this organization are driven more when there's a balance between performance and values. And if you see every step which we take, so I've spoken about hiring, I've spoken about performance management, I've spoken about reward. Let me give you another example of taking feedback. If we go and seek feedback from employees and don't act on them, don't respond to them, don't sense it and respond. It's another aspect where people will believe that we are not walking the talk. So, in a sense, leadership role modeling has the biggest impact. And second is all people processes, HR processes, which people start behaviors of individuals will tune towards what they see gets recognized and rewarded. And that's what we need to do to make sure we embed in this the purpose and values of in HR processes. I'll leave with one story which is there, which is folklore here in our organization. Uh, it's about driving the values of integrity in Wipro. And the story that we have a factory, where we make soaps in Tumkur and it's off Bangalore. And 20 years back when we were setting it up, we were not given, we were sought for seeking uh, bribe to get a power connection. Which Mr. Premji said no. For 18 months that factory ran on generators on a huge loss. And it became such a folklore that and that drove the grain of integrity in this organization. So there are many stories, as you said, Pakunda said that this has to be driven by life stories and folklores and trying to drive this, but every HR process should walk the talk of what we say on values. And this is so critical because this is what employees see, this is what they believe in, this is what they will do. Behaviors will change when they see they're getting rewarded on that. I'll pause here, Rajiv. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this sharing, Saurabh. I turn now to my friend and Mahindra colleague, Rusbe Rani, who's a president in Mahindra and a member of the group executive board. Rusbe, would you like to share your insights on some unique ways of communicating and celebrating stories of purpose and values?
Sure, Rajiv. Thank you very much, first of all, for having me on this forum. And needless to say, everything that I'm going to be talking to you about is not going to be news to you, since you have been an integral part of everything that we've done in the Mahindra Group over the past few years. So I think before I go into communication of our core purpose, unique ways of doing that, let me just read out to you what our core purpose is. And it reads as follows. We will challenge conventional thinking and innovatively use all our resources to drive positive change in the lives of our stakeholders and communities across the world to enable them to rise. It is captured in one single word, which is this 4-letter word RISE. Right? And I think the first point I want to make is a clear articulation itself makes a big difference. The second thing I want to say is that any core purpose, if it has to become a reality, needs to be in the DNA of the organization. We cannot implant something that we are not and pretend to be somebody whom we are not, right? So one of the first things we did was to ensure that our core purpose was imbued into each of the HR levers that we have in the Mahindra Group. And I'm not going to talk about how we did that because that's not the subject of the point that I've been asked to speak on. Moving on to communication. So I would say 2 or 3 things. First of all, we set up an internal RISE portal which became a single source of truth for all communication to employees across the group, to most parts of the group, I should say. It wasn't exactly across the entire group, but it was certainly to most parts of the group, right? And on this portal, we had people putting up RISE stories, people putting up their own brushes with RISE, how they've been living RISE on a daily basis. And this itself created a lot of buzz in the organization. I think defining the leadership characteristics and imbuing RISE into the leadership competencies itself was a big step forward. And communicating that to all our leaders, whether they were senior, middle, or junior, I think that exercise and that communication itself made a big difference. The way we went about communicating as a corporate brand was entirely around RISE. So we have been using two platforms of communication for the corporate brand. The first one is called RISE for Good. And RISE for Good is about all the good work that we do in terms of community and sustainability related initiatives, including good governance. And we have had a lot of, we've made a lot of stories that we have put out on social media and on YouTube. There are films like Ladki Haath Se Nikal Jayegi, which emphasizes the importance of girl child education. Hardest Worker, which emphasizes the importance of tree plantation, and Cut the Crap, which is about waste management. Now, these films have got views in millions and a huge amount of engagement, and we've done 360-degree campaigns around it. The second platform is what we call Futurize. And Futurize is a play on words. It combines future and rise, and it's the creative expression of the fact that Mahindra is innovative, right? Futurize, again, we've done campaigns like Sounds of Innovation, which is, we actually did a film which picked up the sounds that various innovative parts of our company make. So for example, we are in electric car racing. And when you hear the whine of the electric car going down the racetrack, that itself is an amazing sound. When you hear the sound of advanced robots working in our auto factories, that sound is unique. Putting all those sounds together in a film and making a creative expression out of it was very, very well received. Thirdly, and very importantly, business for good. So let me emphasize here that RISE is not only about doing good to society and driving positive change by the CSR and sustainability related activities we do. It's also about doing good through our businesses, and that's how we ultimately become profitable and meet our commitment to our shareholders. So if you look at many of our businesses and many of the business actions we've taken, they are built around driving positive change. I mean, when we entered financial services, that was about providing loans to the non-bankable, giving them a means to generate income and through that repay our loans. The way Tech Mahindra stepped in when there was the whole Mahindra Satyam issue and took over that business and turned it around, again, was about driving positive change through alternative thinking. So I think it's not only, so essentially let me end by saying that business for good is as important as is RISE for good. And finally, if you look at our social media today, we also speak about people who rise, which is both our in-house as well as external heroes who have driven positive change in the environment around them. It's all these stories that bring RISE to life and make our core purpose real. Thank you, Rajiv.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rusbe. Thank you. I now turn to Adarsh Mishra, CHRO of Panasonic. Others, would you like to share some of the unique ways that you've been involved in communication and celebrating stories of purpose and values? Over to you, Adarsh.
Good evening, Anil sir. Good evening, Rajiv sir. And thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this wonderful panel. And it's a good opportunity to learn and unlearn some of the practices, which has been happening in the area of this important subject. So I'll break my, views on two areas. That is purpose, value, and led transformation, and what we have been doing at Panasonic India here. So sometime back, I was going through article in HBR probably last year during October-November issue, and I read their research, and it said that more than 4,000 books and multiple thousand articles have been written in this area, but still it is a good subject for organizations to work. So firstly, as Mr. Mukundan also mentioned, that it is important for us to realize that transformation is a process. It should not be seen as an event. So at times, companies make mistake, and this is where we need to, address. And in the current times, purpose has become a management watchword. Many people, not just the millennials, want to work for organizations whose mission and business philosophy resonate with them intellectually and emotionally. So this is very, very important aspect to it. And today, the challenge for the leadership team for any organization is to define the problem first. When I say the problem, it means many employees feel disconnected from their organization's purpose because they don't understand. And in a recent article, again in the HBR, it was, in a survey, it was presented that 39% of them said that they clearly see the value they created in the respective organization. However, more than half of them did not know what was the value and what was the purpose of that particular organization. The second is the solution. This is a big challenge. Again, in today's organization, need to clearly articulate purpose statements that answers what is the reason for their existence, why they exist. So that is a very important aspect. And second is, what value are you giving to the customers? And the third, the most important aspect, what I feel is, it is the continuous effort for companies to attract the right people, break down silos, facilitate cross-functional collaborations, and invest behind the organization's purpose, and make sure that leaders personifies that purpose through their words and action. So talking about our founder, Konosuke Matsuda, when he started this company in 1918, he crafted a 200-year strategy for himself. And we celebrated 100-year 2 years back in 2018. And he also talked about basic business philosophies. The top philosophy of Konosuke Matsuda says that contribution to society. He meant that fulfilling our responsibilities as industrialists to the communities in which we operate. I am sure Rajiv sir and Mukundan sir would agree with me. It is very, very similar to what Tatas have been doing, and exactly in this area. And Tatas have also completed, I guess, 116 odd years. So a very rich culture. Second, his philosophy was fairness and honesty. He taught us, and he said that to be fair and honest in our business deals, whatever we do. And the third was courtesy and humility. So he wrote that we will always remain cordial, modest, and respect the rights and needs of others. So now there's a university called PHP. They taught prosperity and happiness, and it is, if you Google, you'll get to know more in detail. And all the writings and all the work is stored there in that university, and they are teaching in many business schools also. Now coming to our strategy at Panasonic, we, we took 5-step approach to build our transformation journey. So initially we established a sense of urgency. where we identified and discussed the potential crisis and the major opportunities for us, then created a vision for ourselves. What was more important was to communicate the vision and we used every vehicle possible to communicate the vision and strategies to our people, to the down the line, teach new behaviors to our employees. The fourth one was empower others to act on those visions. It was about encouraging non-traditional ideas and taking risks. And the fifth was to plan for and create a short-term wins for the team. It was about recognizing and rewarding employees involved in the improvement. So we launched a campaign called Vibrant Panasonic in line with our founder's philosophy almost 5 years back. And Vibrant Panasonic is a mission where all the employees strive for a shared success. It is the culture DNA of our organization. And the whole belief is that if we get the culture right, most of the other stuff like delivering greater customer experience will just happen naturally on its own. So we started with the basic, it is built basically on the platform of learning, living and achieving. It goes further to engagement, well-being and to improving the happy quotient of the organization. And we believe that a company's culture resides in heart and soul of its employee. And we said that culture should not be only the responsibility of the HR department. The entire team has to come forward. They need to, they need to own the responsibility. And that is how we came up with the thought of creating culture innovators and culture drivers in this organization. So every department, they had their nomination, and the average age of this company is 29 years. The aspirations are big. So we got around 40 to 50 culture innovators in the organizations. So we have our operations, we have factories, and we have sales and service network across the country. So we took nominations, and there was a process which was followed to identify these people. And we had an extensive training program, and we gave them inputs about the basic business philosophy. They were taught about the company's values, and we made them the propagators. So we ran a lot of activities to bring people together, because we are into multiple business. We are into B2B, B2C. We are into consumer durables, connected solutions, automotive business. And when we hire people, we get people from across industries. It was very, very important for us to have a common culture plan for all of them. And then we ran programs for our employees, and we did it very simply. And programs like Heart to Heart, where the head of department was supposed to have a heart to heart with people, understand their issues, problems, aspirations. Then we had high tea meetings, we have knowledge sharing sessions. Luncheon meeting was very, very successful when multiple departments worked together. And we did this. And going forward, I think last 5 years it has paid us really well. And during this pandemic time, I think the culture innovators and drivers have played a very important role, where they have connected with all the employees on a day-to-day basis, got their issues addressed on a phone call, whether it was a Saturday or a Sunday, because there was a lot of anxiety running, and it really paid us very well. Now coming to the values and belief which which Konosuke Master taught us, contribution to society. I like to quote one small example. In fact, 2 years back, there was an incident which happened in one of our factories in Jhajjar, Haryana. So two of our employees were returning back after work, and unfortunately they met with an accident, and we could not save their lives. They passed away. And as a company philosophy and the empathetic management decision, we got in touch with the family of the employees, and we offered them that in case if they would like to nominate somebody for a job. So one of the candidates, they refused, and the other person wife, she was based somewhere in a very remote village. where, I mean, she was with her two small daughters, and she was a simple graduate and not a tech savvy, not a computer literate. And then we got in touch with her. I requested one of my female colleague to talk to her and to just understand. Of course, we had a good term insurance policy, and it was taken care of, but still the daughters were very small, so we thought that it would be difficult for her to carry on for long. So then we convinced her that you initially, she was not very, she was reluctant, but we convinced her that you do not worry, we'll help you and to understand the organization, how does the organization work. And then we got her here, and then we employed her, and I deputed one of my colleagues from HR to help her and teach her a computer. Recently, during the pandemic, when she was at her native, and while we were opening, gradually, she called me and she said that I want to be in office along with the team. So I said, there's no need. I mean, you should be there and you should take care of your daughters. So she said, no, I have learned how to ride a scooter, because we were not allowing, public transport during the, I mean, the last 2 months, still we are not allowing. She said, I have bought a scooter and I've learned a scooter. I'll come and I want to be with the organization. So she came, and she's a good example. So this is what we are trying to do. Organizations need to, come forward and support employees in whatever way we can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adarsh. Thank you. That was very, very inspiring. I come now to Prashant Tripathi, CEO of Max Life. Prashant, would you like to share with us your experience and your insights in the power of co-creation versus unilateral, top-down driven, values-led transformation?
Yeah, you may unmute yourself.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you, Anil, first of all, for inviting me. And before I begin, I can't tell you how envious I feel of the students of soil. Because each time I think about the education that I got, and I went to one of the IIMs, Anil, as you know, the training there doesn't prepare you for corporate life. There was no discussion ever about mission, vision, values, which we are having right now, which people in the college actually are observing. No discussion on people management, no discussion on humility, no discussion. There's absolutely, it prepares you just for 3 years. And what we are discussing now is so important in the context of a corporate life. And hence, I feel really blessed to be a part, and I think people will take a lot of value out of these discussions. To start my own life, I first worked with Tatas and then went to GE after my B school. And GE was perhaps continues to be one of the role models in terms of creating the culture. And that was the famous Jacquel Chira, very young guy. We were trained on all the values. We now read in books about energy, energize, execute, etc. So I learned all that. But unfortunately, never was a part of co-creation, never was a part. It was just like a learning and feeling good about it, and perhaps learning some leadership skills. So the first time I got exposed to co-creation, understanding, what is the deep-rooted meaning of vision and, the culture and value was my experience with Max Life Insurance. And, it had a humble beginning. I don't know how many of you know Max Life Insurance, but it is one of the largest life insurance in India. And we compete with some of the big brands in India and have done really well. And one of the reasons I think why we have done well is exactly what I'm going to talk about. We followed what, you famously read about, vision, mission, and values. Those were things. I land up, and as a part of my job, I was strategy head. I was given the responsibility to create the big strategy and how it works. You do the market thing, complete left brain oriented exercise. You do the business plans, you tell the team, the entire organization what and how we can succeed. And we did all that. And we were ready at a management level with a plan. And then one of my senior colleagues, and I knows him really well, Rajit, he said, but we need to talk to our team. So, coming from a finance-oriented background, I found that a bit weird, saying, what is there to tell the team? I mean, ask the team, just go and deploy the plans, and let's roll forward. No. Please, let's get together all the leadership people, talk to them to find out how to create it. So I said, okay. Let me hear that. And then we got together, we created, we got everyone, we took their views and came a lot of suggestions. It was a rather long exercise, but we came up, we found acceptance, we changed a few things, and then we started to roll forward. And that was my first experience of co-creation. And each time, Rajit will say we need to co-create. The CFO in me, the finance guy in me will say, what is the need to co-create? Let's go forward. But each time I will come out of those exercises, I will feel hugely blessed saying, oh my God, good thing that we did. And the final thing happened when I became the CEO about 2 years ago. And by then I started to believe in the process because I knew that it always works. There's no point having something in your head. You will never be able to deploy in the organization. It is never possible. We never have had a purpose in the company. We had the value, we had the mission, we had the vision. Many times when you ask people what they are, people in the business get confused. So we need to understand it, what they are. Vision is perhaps the North Star. Where are you headed? Where? A purpose is why do you exist? It's a very important question to be answered. Many companies don't have that. Many companies believe that people generally understand, but there is a point, there's a value in clearly articulating what the purpose of the organization is, because that really galvanizes, unleashes energy in the organization. And then the values are the railroads, the processes, the tools that you give to the organization to achieve the vision. So, we didn't have any purpose, and it was very important for me to really drive the organization towards identifying the purpose. Fortunately for us, we all made a visit to the Disney Institute, and what a great company. And their purpose is very simple. They say they exist to create happiness for their guests. While these are one sentences, very easy, tough part is how do you identify the purpose for your organization? And we began a very detailed journey. We hired somebody, we went, created focus group, talked to people, and identified why people take pride in working in Max Life Insurance. And we found that it was a very social thing. And then we came up with our purpose, which is called, we are there to inspire people to increase the value of their value of others' lives, our customers' lives. We are there to increase the value of people's lives. So we identified the purpose. We also looked at values. Values at times require refresh. So while the railroads need to be changed. So we had 4 values. I changed 2 of them. And we brought 2 new values, which are very relevant about customer obsession and growth mindset, in addition to the caring and collaboration, which existed earlier. But the big thing was, how do we deploy this? Many a times it is about walk the talk. Many a times it is also about people demonstrating, talking. But we decided a rather extended thing while we went and communicated after the co-creation, which lasted at leadership level, at leadership -1 level. While we co-created, we went and explained to the organization what is meant. We created simplistic definitions of everything. We create, to the organization. But more than that, we also made values a part of our performance management. So typically in the organizational setup, you will have goals and you will have competencies. I changed the competencies. I said competencies don't help, just put the values. So people get measured on the goals, and then people get measured on the values. And combination of that, the two actually identifies the leaders. We also tried to ensure that we make the purpose easy for people to understand. In our context, maximizing the value of somebody's life is about selling or giving more and more sum assured. So we created a metric and we started to measure people on that. And as a result, our outcomes have been fantastic. Take pride that we are the only life insurance company and the only insurance company in top 100 great places to work. We ranked number 24 on great places to work. We made huge progress from last year 35. We jumped to 24, 11 points. And people who participate in those surveys, the improving the ranks are rather difficult on, especially the great places to work survey. Our scores have gone up on brand consideration, one of the highest so far. People have started to understand, but very proud of the performance for the entire COVID period, where we haven't given any increment, many things are blocked in the organization. We are on a big cost-cutting drive. Our performance versus market is plus 16% delta on growth. We are the fastest growing life insurance company amongst the top 4. People are all aligned, working really hard. We launched 4 products. We do 2 of the biggest deals. Really the level of motivation, energy in the organization is outstanding. So to cut the long story short, there is a value in everything that is spoken about. There is a value in contribution. There is a value in communication. There is a value in manifestation, measurement, and one has to go all the way to build the entire thing, because that collectively forms the culture of the organization, which perhaps is most important. People talk about strategy, but it is more important than financials. It is more important than outcomes. It is more important than short-term goals. Perhaps it is more important than business plan. That's my learning. I just thought I'll share with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prashant. Thank you for the passion. It's sort of flowing from you. Thank you. Now we come to the last but not the least panelist sharing. Rishi from Microsoft will share the Microsoft story of values-led transformation. Rishi, over to you.
Thanks, and hi, good afternoon, everyone. And good to hear about all of you speak so passionately about this very important topic of purpose, values, and culture. I think purpose, values, and culture, resulting culture plays a very important role in organizations' long-term success. And at Microsoft, we've been on an incredible journey, incredible transformation journey from last few years. And we have made a lot of efforts to define the mission and building our culture, and then made the changes to our systems and processes to support that. So if I go back, in 1975, Microsoft was founded on innovation and one big audacious goal, or rather a crazy dream at that time, to put a PC in every home. And if you see now, we kind of achieved that. And the good thing is that the things that fueled the company then are still core to what fuels us today, the drive to grow, innovate, and change the world. However, a few years back, we faced our first set of big challenges. We were actually in a race to stay relevant, and which kind of actually led us to redefine our mission, our culture, and so on. So the situation was such that the PC sales was declining, and in an alarming way for the first time. Microsoft's stock price was at a low point, and projections were not very positive. But when one looks back, we realize that by most accounts, things were okay. We were still solid. Our financials were fine. We were growing and also making interesting things, but we had a perspective problem. We were a middle-aged and once successful tech company. There is also an interesting story around this. Someone asked a group of people to draw a pictographic of org structures of large tech companies of that time. The pictographic that somebody drew of Microsoft was a group of SBUs pointing guns at each other. So we were kind of suffering from internal competition at that time. So clearly a change was required. As they say, timing is everything. So we were already thinking at a company level about starting to shift our culture, making it purpose and value driven. And the inflection point came when Satya was appointed as only a third CEO in 4 decades in February of 2014. So like I mentioned, as a company at that time, the things were good. Our financials were fine, but we wanted to tackle the perspective problem. So the way Satya actually put it that time was we needed to find out who we were, why we were there, and to consider what the world would look like without us. So in short, we had to rediscover our soul. So when Satya took over the reins of company as CEO a few years ago, the first thing he did, along with his leadership team, was evolving our mission to ensure a strong connection to work and building a sense of pride and purpose. Because we believe that the sense of purpose is foundational to our future success. So the world was changing fast. We needed to change with it, but we needed a compelling reason. So in short, we required clarity, we required focus, and we required a sense of purpose. A PC in every home was achieved. We had to move beyond. Hence, we began that journey with a look at our mission. And like every great organization who needs a mission, a noble goal, a challenge worth the effort, we also announced ours. And we basically found it hiding right in plain sight, which connected us back to our earliest days as a company. So our new mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. Now, empower is a word that gets thrown around quite a bit in our industry. So what we mean is that with the right tools, anyone can do anything. So our mission is basically to bring the people and organizations together and help people achieve their potential. And the mission ultimately was the foundation for much of our culture work. The idea for us was, if you remember my earlier example, was to move away from the internal competition culture to a more collaborative culture. And at our core, we wanted to move from a bunch of know-it-alls to a bunch of learn-it-alls, right? So move from fixed mindset to growth mindset. And once we had this in place, we made a very bold statement publicly and asserted our aspire to culture for future business success. Now, the key point on all this is that building a mission statement is an easy task, probably, but building a culture around it takes a lot of effort. It was, I think, Peter Drucker who said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And hence, for a company to roll culture, it's very, very difficult. And you have to make focus changes to make sure that culture is driven in a certain manner. So the concept that there is one culture that we will freeze and forget is not what would have worked, and hence we wanted to make very targeted focus changes here. So we know that our industry does not respect tradition. It respects innovation on a going forward basis. Hence we had to adapt to the world, and that's why our culture was founded in growth mindset, which means that anyone can change, learn, and grow. And we believe that potential is nurtured and not predetermined. So, culture change requires changes in behaviors and habits. And additionally, it requires changes in symbols and systems that reinforce these behaviors. And most importantly, consistent, passionate communication. These changes take time. Hence, we had to address each of these components with intention with a very clear intention in an ongoing way. Like it said, that Rome was not built in a day. So this is not a short-term proposition; it was a long-term journey. So there are multiple examples of how we went around doing that. Just to give you an example, one of the first things we did was we did away our stack ranking system of performance incentive, which is what I mean is that we moved away from stack rankings to no ratings, and it is very important because in a context where we were a dominant player in a oligopolistic market, in a dominant market, the stack ranking system made sense at that time. But when we were moving ahead in a tech culture, we had to do something differently. And you know what? Our employees actually loved it because it gave a lot of empowerment to leaders with obviously a sense of a lot of responsibilities here. The few things that we learned in our journey is that first is you cannot fake it. So real change must be authentic and must be meaningful. We learned that it is important to have a purpose-driven mission. We learned that we have to make symbolic changes, whether it is big or small. Sorry. And the other important thing is that it is important when you are doing such a transformation across so many different countries, so many different people, it is important to have all oars in the water, which means everybody has to be aligned because culture changes and everyone is moving in the same direction. So we did that. We used technology to accelerate the change and land this change at scale and at speed. And you know, we're still on this journey. By the way, we're still learning, and because we know that culture change driven by a mission and values is not a game to be won. We are in it for a long term, clearly, and clearly from what organization was 10 to 15 years back to what it is now, there's a huge change
Thank you. Thank
and
you very much.
driven by all the mission and culture.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thanks.
much. So Rajiv ji, I think we should get straight into the question and answer.
Yes, yes, please.
So here is a question from Vijay Kumar Jambal. And how do you hire people on values and purpose? What are some of the best practices you have deployed that have worked for you? So Mukund, would you like to take that question? That how do you hire people based on values and purpose?
So I think fundamentally, a lot of times it is about understanding you can go through a CV, but some of the questions on how did they handle their success, how did they handle their difficult times. I think the responses which they give actually guide us about the person a lot more than fundamentally, just going through the CV or asking a technical interview. And we've seen that the holistic way a person is approached when the person has been confronted with difficulty, and when you probe deeper, you learn a lot more about that person in terms of and it's these sort of experiences which actually tell us a lot more about the person. The second thing is about their success. Sometimes handling a success in a way which is enabling everybody else, empowering everybody else, and going beyond oneself. I think is an art, is a facet which is very important, especially as you rise up in the organization. Because as a leader, you cannot, the success is not yours, success is the team's, and you have to enable and empower them. So we look for those clues in what people have done in the past. So there is a limited amount of way you can sort of look at the fundamental points which somebody puts in a CV or talks to you about the specifics they do in a job. But you learn a lot more about attitudes, about the way the person thinks and works and engages by in these sort of two different kinds of situations. And really, that's what we look for. What we call them, I think several people have written this crucibles of management, where you actually are tested. And I think those are important elements. Another way somebody has put it in fact, is about how have you come across the fork in the road, where there are two paths to follow and both may be equally compelling, and what you choose many times tells a lot more about the person. So these are the sort of guiding principles we do. The second is zero tolerance for even the minutest of doubts. I think that an organization must have. I think there are some clear no-nos, and to me, when I joined, I still remember Dr. Irani telling us, I'll tell you something which will keep you in the job in Tatas and what will get you out of the job in Tatas. And he told us that, every action you take, read it as a headline in newspaper and as if your grandmother read it the next day. And if it passes your grandmother test, you can continue to do that work. Otherwise, it would not. This is a time when we didn't have codified norms. And I think these are things which sort of guide us and what a person does. I hope I tried to answer. Maybe HR specialists should tell us what they really do.
Thank you. Thanks, Mukund. Shivani Bhatnagar, one of our students, is asking a question, and let me request Ranjan to answer it. How can an organization percolate its values and purpose virtually to get inspiration of everybody? How can you do this virtually, given the challenge today, Ranjan?
Thank you. Thank you, Shivani, for asking this. But I was also wondering, why do you want it to be percolated virtually only? I mean, it has to be percolated. I think everybody has spoken about it. It has to be percolated down to the last. I mean, let's say we take our example. Our values are on 4 prong: care, innovation, passion, and trust. We work on these 4. And this has to be a day-to-day thing for each one of us whoever is working. I was hearing what Prashant was also telling. Shivani, you can just go back to what he was talking about, this creating those new values and new, part which has been brought in Max life. That really makes a difference. So it has to be percolated right, whether it is virtually, of course. Virtual is the medium these days. That's a different thing. But it needs to be done through exemplifying it. Number one, by the leaders. They must always display it at any point of time. I think Adarsh was only taking, you just can't fake it. I think it has to be there. It has to be displayed first off by your leaders. Number 2 is that communication. I think that's extremely important in these days, that all leaders, everybody, of course, I keep on saying to my people that all of you are at your places, you all are leaders, and you must communicate with your people. You must engage with your people, whatever way, it must be there, and these values must be transcribed onto them. So I think, Shivani, the best part is that I do it myself first. That should be the one that I do. Then it percolates everywhere else. And then obviously communicate.
Saurabh, the next question is for you. While values and purpose must be the most important factor, Akash Rajkumar is asking, the reality is that there are leaders sometimes who are themselves not guided by those values and purpose, because there are some people in positions of responsibility. And sometimes their own personal values and purpose seems to be different. And so how does one do justice to such a thing, including when you're hiring somebody, he's an extremely competent person, has his own set of values, may not be quite aligned to that of your organization. So what can you do? Similarly, inside a company, there is a top performer, but there are some values of his which don't match those of the company. So how do you handle such cases, both at the time of hiring as well as at the time of sort of dealing with such people in senior positions?
Thanks, Anil. Very critical and very tough for all leaders. There are a lot of CEOs on this panel. But I think the toughest call you have to take is when a person is performing and doesn't display the values. And that's where the mettle of the organization comes into play, where you are able to take the right calls and recognize people, because from a long-term sustenance of a business, performance and values both play an equally critical part. One of the other is not, it's an and, it's not an or. If you perform and you don't have to display the values and you have your own set of values, they cannot be recognized. And this is where, organizations which are stand out have been able to make calls and take decisions based on their people perform votes. And I gave the example, we were able to display this by example by telling that an outstanding performer not having the right values was not given the bigger role coming up. And that's what leads for people to believe that this is the way the organization rewards and drive that message.
Rusbeh Irani, this is a question for you. Pulkit Nagpal is asking a question. How do you keep people engaged at a high level when they are working only virtually from home? Because at some point, the fatigue sort of reduces the engagement. So what are some of the innovative steps that, for example, Mahindra might be doing to keep engagement levels high at the time of virtual working from home?
So I think that's a very good question. Thank you for the question. I would say 2 or 3 things. First of all, ensuring that teams stay connected. So even if they are virtually connected, ensuring that the bosses stay connected with the teams, and at least once a week have a team meeting which is not around a specific agenda. So I do a team meeting of all my direct reports every Thursday evening in which we have no agenda. We just spend an hour discussing how we are feeling, what's going on, or anything else, including, going back into some of our childhood experiences. So I think staying connected is critical. Secondly, there are various well-being activities that we do online. Most things that we did offline have shifted online. So we do yoga online now. We do other wellness activities online. Having wellness counselors and making counseling service available to our employees is another initiative that we've taken. We have our Founders Day coming up, and we are going, and normally we celebrate that in physical locations. We are going to celebrate that online also. So honestly, the power of technology today is such that it has surprised most people. And it's just a matter of will. Frankly, there's a lot you can do online, which you were not doing offline earlier, if you just apply your mind and have the will.
Prashant, this is a question to you. Richard Bhattacharya is asking that since co-creation is so important and it's a key to success, how to ensure that this co-creation process really has the desired outcome and that people are really adapting to this co-creation at a fast pace? What are some of the insights you have about it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Within the co-creation, I think it is very, very important. Even if the co-creation doesn't happen with every individual, we should talk to the spirit of the organization. We should talk to the way the culture has been, the evolution has been. So whatever you choose as purpose or whatever you choose as values, people should intuitively relate to it. It has to be a part of communication, number one. But beyond of that, I think the first part of communication, the first part of executing is to communicate, and that communication never take communication for granted. So it doesn't mean that you did a communication for 2 months and 3 months, and then you're done with it, and people will relate to it, because it's like a moving water. There are many people coming inside the organization, there are people going out of the organization, especially in our kind of organization where front end people come and go quite often. You'll be surprised to know that about 15 months down the line, every communication that I begin or every communication that the senior leadership team will begin, they will first begin like a ritual. They will first begin with talking about purpose and values. I don't get bored just going over and over again. There are videos, there are case studies that we do within the organization for people to understand. And we explain exactly what is meant by each. Number one. Number two is performance management. I believe in it. Like I mentioned to you, we measure people's performance on the values, measure people's performance on something related to purpose. And the moment you do that, there's higher propensity for people to understand, align. Many a times you get confused about, is it my personal value, it is company value or whatever. My sense is that as long as the personal values and the company's values are close to each other or on a contiguous space, it is very easy for somebody to work. However, if they're quite far apart, there's no way that individual can continue to work, and it will be hence identified, and that person will fall off. Feedback process should be given. So that's the third one. And last but not the least, making sure that you make heroes out of these, recognizing people, rewarding people. For example, customer obsession. There are customer heroes in our company. There are growth mindset heroes in our company. Those are mechanisms that we deploy in the organization actually to be adapted quickly. And at the end of the day, it has to be intuitive and very simple. Don't attempt to have 10 values, and don't attempt to have your purpose statement which runs in 5 sentences. It should be very simple.
Thank you, Prashant. Rajan Makhijani, former colleague of mine from Aisha Consulting, later with McKinsey, and now a part of our new network of consultants. Rajan, you are allowed to talk, so ask your question.
Thank you, Anil. I guess my question is that earlier companies used to have a producer's mindset for products. Henry Ford said that you can have any color you like as long as it's black. Now, I find that in the case of organizational purpose, companies are still in that producer's mindset. I will make a purpose for the company, and you, the employee, must find yours in it. Now, is there an alternate to this? We are working on a startup that uses technology, both human technology and the information technology, to see if individuals can discover their own purpose and then have careers designed to have them live out their purpose in the organization. How do you respond to this bottom-up idea?
Rishi, Khandelwal, your response, also Adarsh Mishra, the two of you have not spoken and others can respond to, but Adarsh, you and Rishi, how about this, that employees express their purpose and their whole idea is they try to realize their purpose through the organization. So
very, very important topic and very, nice question. Actually, it is all about creating a culture where you promote inclusiveness. When you include people and when you make them a part of the entire process, then it becomes easy for you to execute. So in our case, whatever we do, I was talking about the culture innovator and the culture driver concept, just to give you example. Whenever we decide a culture or purpose or value for us, so this team of people, they join together small groups, they brainstorm, and then they propose their ideas. And on that basis, top three ideas or three thoughts are selected, and then it is presented to the CEO and CHRO. Then we have open discussion, and that is how we take decision. So when you include people and when you make them a part of the decision process, it becomes easy for you to execute. So this is what I have experienced in the past last 5-6 years while driving this initiative of change.
thank you, Adarsh. Rishi, do you have any response to that?
Yes, I just wanted to add to that point. So when it comes to creating lasting change, it's not an overnight process. So we need to bring people along on the journey and get them both educated about the change and engaged with the change. And that is where, it gets slightly tricky because, if you see, philosophy does not always equal reality. So it is easier to gain fans of philosophy than of implementation. Hence, it takes a lot of due diligence to reinforce philosophy and best practices. And there is no perfect system, I think, in my opinion. But what seemed to work for us is a combination of working on behaviors, working on systems, and most importantly, consistent, constant communication.
Yeah, but Rishi and others, with due respect to what both of you said, Rajan's question is completely different, actually. He's asking a very different question. He's saying, how about employees defining their own life's purpose and finding some meaningful way to live their life's purpose into the organization? It is not about organization purpose being achieved through people. It's the other way around. So, employees achieving their purpose. Yes, Mukund.
Anil, I think it's very important to do that. I can tell you about one of our most successful CSR program came from management task officer who spent years running commercial business. And she actually decided one day that she wanted to check this social program we were running. And she took the reins of that and she's completely transformed it. I think people have to find purpose within the framework of the organization. Otherwise, the organization will lose direction. But I think the biggest issue is how do you co-create that with the employees? So clearly right now, for example, in terms of in the past, we used to have training program which boss would recommend in the annual report, once in 6-month report. Today, actually, employees are free to say that, listen, I think I need to go here and I think I need these sort of training, and it's a dialogue. So the changes have started to happen. But is it a holistic change, as Rajan has said, that it's completely driven by employees? No, it is not. It's a combination of company and employees working together to find that meaningful zone within the purpose of the organization, a purpose for the employee. Which is why I think it's very important for organization to have the purpose which is slightly more enabling and ennobling in terms of outside external world, so that employees can connect. And which is why sustainable organizations search for their meaning in the external world and bring it in to say, this is our call to action. This is why we exist. And then within that, employees are a subset of that. But I haven't come across companies where it has been largely left to employees. I think it's a combination today. That's all I would say.
Thank you. Rishabh Prakash is asking a question, and Rajiv ji, I would like you to respond, although you are the sort of facilitator, but this might be an interesting question for you.
Yeah.
It's you know, how can you quickly adapt if you come from a company with a strong values and you work there for some time, and you join a new company and you are expected to also adopt the new company's values? So how do you do that? Because something has impacted you earlier, and now you are required to now adapt to a new environment. So is there some way of doing it? You were a Tata Steel and a Tata person, and then you joined Mahindra, which also had very strong, and perhaps there were some common values. Therefore, it helped you, but you might want to elaborate.
Yeah. So I would first say that before you decide to join an organization, you should try to ensure, in fact, that's the most important thing, to ensure that the value system or the culture of that organization is something that you're comfortable with, that there is an alignment between your own values and your purpose in life and the purpose and values of the organization. So that should be a precondition, I would suggest, to joining an organization. Now, if you have not done that and you suddenly find that there is a problem there, then you have two choices. One is that you leave the organization. And I think that choice you should be open to exercising. If not, then I guess it's a difficult thing, but you have no choice but to slowly make, use all the things that people have talked about to change. But I think the important thing is that before you sign up, you should make sure that the culture and the purpose and the values of the organization and your own values and your own purpose are in sync. That should be a precondition. That's what I would advise.
Yeah.
And the second advice I would give is that if you're uncomfortable, then you should exercise the option to leave.
Correct. Thank you. Adarsh, you come from an outstanding company, Panasonic. I can't tell you how much I love the story of Matsushita-san. And similarly, Rishi, the Microsoft culture is something which has electrified everybody. And the more recent impact Microsoft has done is something very remarkable. But I think now it's time for us to go to Rajiv to say, Rajiv, give us the essence, the juice of what everybody has talked about before we ask Professor Atindra Bhattacharya to thank you all.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to say that it's been truly very inspiring for me to listen to the stories that I heard, one story after another that was told. So here is what I got, that yes, purpose and values were always important, but in the current circumstances of fear, uncertainty, and rapid change, purpose and values become even more important for taking business decisions of cash, people, and supply chain. So that's the first thing. The second one was the great importance of culture, which is values in action. And what has stuck in my mind is Mukundan saying that there are two bookends of any business. One is purpose and the other is culture, which is values in action, his definition. And in between, there is strategy and there is tactics. So this to me was something that has really stuck in my head. The power of co-creation, the importance of living by making sure that all the processes and all the HR levers are aligned totally to the culture and to the processes. A clear articulation of what the purpose is, and communicating so that it becomes implanted in the DNA of the organization. And this point came out again and again and again. There were statements like, if we get culture right, results will follow. Or culture eats strategy for purpose. Culture resides in the heart and soul of every employee. And the responsibility is not that of any one person or department, but it is that of any employee. The vital importance of co-creating instead of having something thrust down from the total leadership, and the power of co-creation and how it transforms the very energy and the business results of the organization, and the rediscovery of the soul. So I just see here a huge business importance, especially in fear and uncertainty, of purpose and values coming to life in the everyday processes of the business, and the extreme importance of co-creation, of ownership, and especially of leaders walking the talk. And then the wonderful stories, there's so many of them, it would take me a long time, but this is what I understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Atendra, over to you.
So good evening, all of you. It was absolutely a joy to listen to all the stories, exceptional stories that you all had. And, I would only say that the bedrock of the foundation of soil basically is on the purpose and values. And when I actually hear the stories of your organization, how they have been leading transformation through purpose and values, it in fact it reinforces our resolve that whatever we are doing at soil is the right thing. And probably I think the world requires more of such institutions which are doing this. I would personally like to thank Ranjan Kumar Mahapatra, Mr. R. Mukundan, Saurabh Govil, Rusbe Irani, Adarsh Mishra, Prashant Tripathy, and Rishi Khandelwal for sharing some of their exceptional stories within their organization, which can actually be great learning, capsules for my students. And lastly, I would like to thank Rajiv and Anil for, bringing all these people together and creating such a wonderful experience. Like Rajiv says, the tapestry was wonderful, and probably, we would probably have to have more of these things. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much. And thank you, the wonderful students and guests from all over the country and some from overseas, for making this very special. And thank you, Rajiv ji. Om Namo Shivaya.
Om Namo Shivaya.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Wonderful.
Thank you. God bless you.
Bye.